The situation was that funnily enough, it was tractors that I was looking at, and so I did get into another website that had a sort of very similar name, and I watched it for a bit, which I shouldn't have done. But my biggest crime, is that on another occasion I went in a second time.
And that was deliberately?
And that was deliberate.
And was that in the Select Committee or in the Commons chamber?
That was sitting, waiting to vote on the side of the chamber. I mean, I don't know whether it's technically chamber or not, really. It's on the side doors as you enter back into the lobbies. What I want
to be clear, on at least one occasion, you were blatantly viewing pornography on your mobile phone in the chamber of the House of Commons.
Yeah.
What sort of, would you have a figure in mind? What sort of compensation would you be looking for?
I would leave that to you. I think that would be fine. We missed me to give.
I mean, we were thinking probably in the range of £2,000 to £4,000 a month, but I don't know if that sounds in the right ballpark.
Yes,
for you.
Look at Boris Johnson's loan. As we've heard, his cousin approached you at a dinner party and said he wanted to give Boris Johnson a lot of money because, again, to use your phrase, he was in some difficulties.
He did not say that.
He didn't say he wanted to give him money?
No, he didn't. He said he wanted to help him.
Well, what does that mean?
Of course, it implies that it could be money or anything else. He didn't say a lot of money.
Right, so let's not dance on the head of a pin. He wanted to help him out of his difficulties because the Prime Minister couldn't manage on his £164,000 salary. I'm still not quite clear why he didn't, since he was a cousin, just ask Boris Johnson directly. Do you want some cash, cuz?
Well, again, I'd say that you, it's probably worth recalling what was going on at the time. We had no vaccine. We faced a national crisis. We had an economy that was collapsing, potentially. We had no vaccine. And he was concerned that his cousin should focus on the job.
I've seen reports on Twitter that there was a Downing Street Christmas party on Friday night. Do you recognise those reports?
I went home. Hold on.
Would the Prime Minister condone having a Christmas party?
What's the answer?
I don't know.
It wasn't a party, it was cheese and wine.
Just be clear, it's not. Is cheese and wine all right? No. It was a business meeting.
I'm joking.
This is recorded. His fictional party was a business meeting. And it was not socially distanced.
So, front page of the Daily Mail there. So, David Warburton obviously is exposed in Sunday newspapers that allegations from 3 women have made allegations against him. There's also an allegation of cocaine taking and also of a loan, £100,000 loan from a Russian businessman, which has been paid back. So this begs the question, I think, we talk about parliamentary standards.
Chris Pincher, Deputy Chief Whip, the man in charge of welfare for Tory MPs, resigned from government last night in disgrace. On Wednesday night, he had been here, the Carlton Club, where he allegedly groped 2 men. Mr Pincher didn't mention the specifics when he resigned, just writing to the Prime Minister, "Last night I drank far too much. I think the right thing to do in the circumstances is for me to resign as Deputy Chief Whip. I owe it to you and the people I've caused upset to do this." Last night, Downing Street sources said the Prime Minister thought Chris Pincher had done the decent thing by resigning, and as things stood, he would face no further action. It was a position that couldn't last even 24 hours. This afternoon, Boris Johnson spoke to a Tory MP who was one of the men allegedly groped, according to a Downing Street source. It was, quote, sufficiently disturbing. And late this afternoon, Chris Pincher was suspended from the party and will now be investigated by Parliament's Independent Complaints and Grievance Scheme.
The Guardian, citing leaked HSBC documents, reported Michelle Mone and her children secretly received £29 million originating from the profits of a PPE business. The business was named as PPE MedPro. The next day, Michelle Mone posted on Instagram, "Don't believe everything you read or everything you think, we were advised." What we could read the day after that was this from the FT. It said, An internal HSBC report seen by the Financial Times traces money transferred by PPE MedPro to accounts that benefited Baroness Mone.
When Mr. Blythe approached you about helping the Prime Minister, did you at any point consider, given the position and the fact that you were considering and then were actively pursuing the position of chair of the BBC, did you actually at any point consider saying simply, sorry, I can't help?
Knowing that I'd had the conversation with him in September, when he called me up asking for the introduction to Mr. Case, clearly, I could have at that time said no.
Yeah. Why didn't you?
Because I felt that I could help ensure that due process was followed.
Didn't you think of saying, I can't help because I'm in the middle of an appointments process for a very high-profile public appointment, chair of the BBC, which, by the way, the Prime Minister will have the final say over, the very person we're talking about. What kind of an idiot do you think I am? That I can, in the midst of that process, that I would think it was appropriate to get involved in an affair of this kind?
Well, I could understand why, knowing, as he did, that I worked in the same complex as the Cabinet Office, and that he wanted me to make Mr. Case aware of both his existence and his desire to talk to Mr. Case.
Do you think that Owen Paterson was guilty or not?
I think it was a very sad case, but I think there's no question that he had fallen foul of the rules on paid advocacy as far as I could see from the report. I think the question that people wanted to establish was whether or not, given the particularly tragic circumstances, he'd had a fair right to appeal. And
he had an appeal. His appeal was heard endlessly, both by the committee.
Yes, but Mr. Brown, I wish to restate that informing the impression that the former member for North Shropshire had not had a fair process, I may well have been mistaken. But that was certainly the impression that many people seem to have.